So there were two popular movies that came out last week, and I actually have been pretty busy, so you can see where this is going. Another double feature review. First up, Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog is directed by Jeff Fowler and stars Ben Schwartz as Sonic the Hedgehog, along with Jim Carrey and James Marsden. In this live-action outing, Sonic teams up with a small-town cop to try and defeat Dr. Robotnik. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't love this movie, but I also did not hate it. I have very mixed feelings about it. Now, there are some things that I think were done very well, especially with Sonic and Eggman, but everything else for me fell flat. So, let's get right into it. First off, I think the visual effects artists for this movie deserve a huge round of applause. In case you don't remember, when the first trailer for this movie dropped, Sonic the Hedgehog did not look like Sonic the Hedgehog. He looked like this. And so there was a huge social media uproar. Everybody was trashing it. It's like, oh, this movie's gonna suck. Sonic looks horrible. They were getting roasted all over. So the people behind the movie decided, you know what? Let's push it back and fix Sonic. We hear you. We're gonna fix it. So part of me was happy they did that they decided to push it back and work on it a little more. But at the same time, I was kind of worried because that means the visual effects artists have to work harder and longer, and they may not be getting paid more necessarily. So they sort of got the short end of the stick, but I think they really made the most of it, and the visual effects look great in this movie, especially under that time crunch that they had to really spend more time with it and start almost from scratch. I don't know how much of it they had to redo in order to integrate this new design for Sonic, but from what they were able to do in that time frame, I'm really impressed. It did look great. Eggman's gadgets look really cool, and all of his vehicles and other gizmos. And Sonic himself looked really great, especially the effects they used to make him run and the kind of energy that flowed around him as he was using his powers. I thought that looked really cool. In terms of characters, I think Sonic and Eggman were done really well. These felt like the characters from the games, the cartoons, the characters we grew up with. Well, not all of us, but most of us. And I thought it was interesting that in this movie there's kind of a juxtaposition between the two worldviews of these characters. Sonic is someone who's been by himself. He's kind of stranded on Earth, has nobody from his past life, has no friends, and he's just doing things on his own, but he wants friends, he wants community, he wants people to hang out with, right? And that's what he's fighting for in this movie, whereas Jim Carrey's character, Eggman, is someone who's had to deal with other people his whole life, and he's just tired of it. He always sees himself as the smartest guy in the room, and he thinks everybody else is an idiot. So he wants nothing to do with people, and so these two are going at each other. Sonic is fighting for friendship, and Jim Carrey, Eggman, is fighting for himself. And I thought that was an interesting clash they had in this movie. Let's talk about Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is a great actor, extremely talented, and he really commits to every role that he does. This one is no different. He was absolutely crazy. Now, I kind of wish the movie was as crazy as his character. Like, this man was really committing to it. He was really just having fun with it. And his energy is one of the redeeming qualities of this movie. Like, even if everything else was boring, you still are super entertained watching him just go crazy on screen. So he was definitely one of the best parts of this movie. Ben Schwartz was also great as Sonic. I think he sounded like Sonic. He looked like Sonic. He embodied Sonic. It was just Sonic. I think he just did great. I mean, it's not much really. It's a voice performance, but he did great with what they gave him. What didn't work? For me, the two biggest things that didn't work for me in this movie were the story and the comedy. The story, I think, had potential, but then it ended up going in a somewhat cliche, generic direction, at least in my opinion. First of all, I think they start off in a really interesting place. They start in Sonic's world, so you see elements of the games, but also some stuff that I don't think were necessarily in the games or the cartoons and stuff, but they were new and sort of original things or twists on something that we know. And I was interested to see where these things were gonna go, but then you don't hear anything else about them for the rest of the movie, which I thought was kind of disappointing. But then when we get to Earth, I feel like it becomes a movie that I've seen so many times where a cartoon character or a video game character comes to Earth, the real world, they're an alien or something along those lines. They meet a human, they go on some adventure, and then this same human is trying to protect this character from some other person or being that wants to experiment on them, capture them, whatever that is. I just feel like I've seen that movie a lot of times now, especially with these live action remakes, reboots, whatever you want to call them. So I kind of wish they had done something a little more original or unique with that. I would have liked to see more Sonic lore, and I think based on the end credit scene, we may see that in future movies, but as of this movie, I feel like it just felt kind of Like, you could have taken Sonic and Eggman out of this movie, and I feel like any other character could have been put in it, and it would still be the same thing. I just wish they did some more Sonic-related things, because honestly, Sonic and Eggman are the only Sonic things really in it. besides the ring thing and the little glimpse of his world in the beginning. Everything else seems kind of just boring because it's just Earth and it's a small town. I mean, I wish they did more. Next thing, the comedy. For me, the jokes didn't really land, and I could tell this was marketed a lot more towards children, especially with the comedy. Now, there are some kids' movies that do have adult jokes hidden in there in some places, and I think there are some of those here, but for me, they didn't work. A lot of the humor for me just seemed more childish to me. And the children that were in the theater with me as I was watching, I could tell they were having a great time. They were laughing and cheering, all that stuff. So this is definitely a movie I think more for them than I would say the adults. That's just me. But I think for me, the comedy was just eh. The verdict. I think Sonic the Hedgehog is... I didn't love this movie, but I also didn't hate it. Sonic and Eggman were great. The depictions of them were great. Their juxtaposition of worldviews was done really well. But everything around them, the rest of the movie surrounding these characters, was not as great. I feel like the story was very generic and sort of cliche at times. I wish they had done some more Sonic-related things, like they had more Sonic lore in it. And also the comedy didn't work for me. I feel like it felt flat most of the time. So I would say if you're a big Sonic fan, you probably will still like it. I think I'm actually in the minority here of thinking it's just all right. I think a lot of people seem to love it, so definitely go check it out. I mean, it's making a lot of money anyway, and I'm sure there will be more Sonic movies in the future. So I do hope that they find a way to make it more Sonic-like, that they add more Sonic elements, so it's not just him in the real world with boring humans. Next up we have To All the Boys, P.S. I Still Love You, which is directed by Michael Fimagnari and stars Lana Condor, Noah Centineo, and Jordan Fisher. Things are going well between Lara Jean and Peter until an old flame comes back into the picture. When I watched the first To All the Boys, I thought it was actually pretty fun. I mean, it's not the best rom-com I've ever seen, but it was entertaining. This one I thought was an interesting sequel, kind of weird. There's some parts I did like, but overall the story was kind of unrealistic for me. So let's get right into it. So what worked? First and foremost, the characters. I think, generally speaking, there are some good characters in this movie, and I feel like they really did help keep it entertaining. I think Lara Jean and Peter's relationship was done really well. I think Noah Centineo and Lana Condor have some chemistry on screen that I think makes it a little more bearable to watch certain things that happen in this movie. There are also some great supporting characters like Chris and Lucas. I feel like these two are great companions to Lara Jean, but they also were entertaining on their own. I thought this movie was shot fairly well. I like the use of food in this movie. There's a lot of cooking scenes that I thought were done really well and they were like oddly satisfying. And then there's also some interesting set pieces and locations that they use to make it really interesting. Now, in terms of color, I feel like sometimes the colors came on a little too strong in certain scenes, but I feel like that's more of a preference thing. All right, and what didn't work? For me, the biggest thing was the premise. I could not get behind it. I haven't read the book, so I don't know if it's like this, but for me, it just did not make sense because a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie, a lot of the drama could have been easily avoided if Lara Jean told John Ambrose, this old flame that comes back, that she has a boyfriend. Literally, the whole movie would be over if she had just said that from the beginning. But she doesn't, so all this stuff starts happening, and there's drama between her and Peter, and her and John Ambrose, and her and this other girl, so it's just becomes so convoluted, but it really is such a simple solution to this problem, so that kind of took me out of it. A lot of the decision-making here didn't make sense. Things people were saying and doing, I was like, why are you doing this? So that was weird for me, like it just took me out of it. And next thing, Lara Jean's little sister. I thought it was kind of weird that she just kept getting away with what she was doing. Last movie, I think she got in a little bit of trouble with the whole letters thing, but here it feels like she really does not have any consequences for her actions. She's just sitting there like a puppet master, pulling the strings on all these people's relationships, really meddling in people's lives. But really, people don't have much to say about it. Like, at one point in the beginning of the movie, you kind of see it, but then after a while, people just forget that she's there, and she's just going around causing all this trouble, but no one's really getting on her about it, which I thought was really weird. Like, this girl also caused a lot of trouble for even setting the letters out in the first place, but then there's some other stuff she does with other relationships. Like, the way she just keeps doing things and no one says anything about it was really weird for me. Now, I'm not gonna lie, some of the mushy parts did get me. I was like, oh, that was cute, or oh, that was bad. Like, the emotion was there, and I was sort of invested in this relationship, but a lot of the decision-making here and the overall premise of the story, I think really did take me out of it for a little bit. So I'm really on the fence about this one. The verdict. I think To All the Boys, P.S. I Still Love You is... Again, this was not a bad rom-com. It was entertaining. It just, when you really think about certain things, it doesn't make sense. So I would say you can still watch it, but honestly, this was just a weird movie for me. So have you seen Sonic the Hedgehog and or To All the Boys, P.S. I Still Love You? What did you think about them? Let me know down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.